Board them right here off the south coast. Senior Russian naval officers have been joining their British and American counterparts in special war games which emphasise the new spirit of cooperation between the former enemies. Sean Holden reports.
Ever since 1945, you'd expect British naval training war games to include Russian forces. But this one is different. This time, the Russians are on our side. These senior Russian naval officers are joining in a simulated UN peacekeeping exercise at the Royal Navy establishment HMS Dryad near Portsmouth. British, American and Russian admirals command the theoretical forces. For the Russian, it was a chance to see each other in a new light.
These are really the best way of cementing relations. People can meet sailors of the other nationalities and they can realise in the case of the Russians that the Russians are not 10-foot tall bears as maybe they've been painted in the past, but are just normal.
And having swapped theoretical secrets, our new allies were piped aboard British ships at Portland today, which wouldn't have allowed them within gunshot range 5 years ago. The Russians watched a squadron dealing with air attacks. Then another exercise. How to stop and search potential blockade runners, for instance in the Bosnian War. Questions about tactics were freely answered. After 4 decades of suspicion, openness was the order of the day. To the Royal Navy, it's a fairly routine exercise, except for the presence of the Russian naval officers. And their participation in this underlines how far the world has changed in a few short years. Sean Holden in Portland for Meridian Tonight.
And long may the cooperation last, I say.
We can't afford to fall out now, can we? They know all our secrets.
Well, still to come, Carl
the aim of
forecasts
the exercise to establish closer links between East and West and to prepare both parties for possible joint operations. And as our defence correspondent Joe Campbell reports, that training could soon be put into practice in the blockade of the former Yugoslavia.
It's a scene that HMS York has played out many times before in the Adriatic, sending sailors to search a suspected blockade runner. Today, though, it's only a drill, but one for a very special audience, a high-level delegation from Moscow. These are skills the Russians will have to learn if they're to join Western ships enforcing the embargo.
If we have a crew that are looking as if they're going to be uncooperative whilst not actually going to be violent against us, we can get onto the ship without requiring any cooperation for them.
The ending of the Cold War means the idea of Russian and Royal Navies working together isn't as far-fetched as it once seemed.
There's no reason why that shouldn't happen, and it may happen sooner rather than later. We see the NATO nations cooperating together under a United Nations mandate in what is called an ad hoc coalition, and there's no reason really why Russia should not really quite soon be members of such an ad hoc coalition, and at that stage the preparatory work that we're doing now will pay enormous dividends.
For the Russians, too, a joint blockade now seems a real possibility as the world tries to respond to the gauntlet thrown down by the Bosnian Serbs' rejection of the Owen-Vance peace plan.
It will depend on the politicians, but we're ready to do it, and today is very useful if we're to prepare to cooperate in the future.
The delegation watching the Navy go through its training at Portland today, though, know there are still battles to be fought back home before West and East can cooperate in their efforts to stop the conflagration in the Balkans.
The Russian Federation should be very cooperative with the Western nations in handling with the Balkan crisis. Because if the belligerents will see that there is a loophole, that there is a watershed between supporters and non-supporters, they will immediately exploit this situation in their favor.
The Russians aren't the only ones with problems over the former Yugoslavia. While the drills continue for now, all Europe now faces increasing pressure from Washington to adopt a more hardline military stance.